Okay, so this is episode 6 of Talking with the Presses, presented by Poetry London Online. My name is Kevin Heslop, and I'm joining Ian Letourneau, the Fiddlehead's managing editor. Ian, thank you for joining me.
Thank you, Kevin. Happy.
I thought maybe we could begin by saying a word about the Fiddlehead's history, as well as its current editorial team. So this is the longest running literary magazine that's been in print in Canada, started in 1945. And you recently had a 75th anniversary issue. And I was wondering if you'd say a word about Sue Sinclair, Ross Leckie, and yourself in terms of your editorial backgrounds, and then whether, given the current moment that we're in, there were challenges that you faced in the publication of this 75th anniversary issue, as well as some of the highlights in it.
Sure. The current editor, as you mentioned, is Sue Sinclair, and she's actually the first woman editor in the 75-year history. And before her, it was Ross Leckie, and I think he was the longest serving editor, 17 or 18 years or something like that. I've been managing editor for 1 year. And I would say the one common thing that unites the three of us, and Ross he's currently the associate editor, so he's kind of like, for a year before Sue became editor, she was associate editor as she learned the ropes, and now Ross has taken a step back and he's still helping out and that sort of thing. That's kind of what their roles are at the moment. But the one thing that unites all three of us is that we're poets. And I think in the course of our careers, as you could call them, we've edited books, we've copy edited books, we've proofread books, we've written books. So that's mostly speaking for myself, that's where I would say all my experiences. I don't know if Ross and Sue have even more. I think Ross is involved with Goose Lane and editing. He's the poetry editor. And Sue was quite involved with Brick Books for some time. I guess I mentioned Sue is the first woman editor. And I think that ties in really well with the 75th anniversary, because the theme that kind of evolved as we were talking about this, and we've been planning this issue and this whole celebration for the last 3 years. So it's been quite an undertaking. The theme that kind of emerged is looking forward, right? And one thing Sue did, and as Ross was leaving, one thing that came up in lots of conversations was we had this advisory editor board for a long time. And basically it was kind of an honorary position. Some, former editors like Don Mackay and Bill Gaston were on there. Prominent people, Jan Zwicky, were on there, but really they didn't do very much. It was just like an honorary position. And we didn't ask them to do anything. I'm not, not casting aspersions on them. We never asked them to do anything, so they didn't do anything. But we decided with the 75th anniversary, we would engage those editors. And we asked the ones that were there if they still wanted to do something and be more active. Some said yes, some said no. And we recruited some more advisory editors. And we tried to draw on as diverse and, dynamic group as we could. And finally, we settled on the idea that we would get them to each curate a section of our 75th anniversary issue with the theme of looking forward as kind of a general organizing principle. I mean, it didn't have to necessarily be, pick all writers who have never published before. Although there are quite a few in the issue that we've never published before, some for the first time, some are just beginning. And Brian Bartlett actually had an interesting idea. He picked beginner poets who hadn't published anything until they were 50 years old or more. So it was kind of an interesting little twist on the idea. So for the past 3 years, we've been, planning this issue and applying for grants We decided to do it as an extra issue on top of the 4 we usually do. And if there was one thing I'd say I wouldn't, I'd caution us against doing again, would be doing that. Because I guess when we did our 50th anniversary, it was just a regular issue. That was more book-like. So in the last 3 years, we were planning. We had launches organized in Winnipeg and Toronto and Montreal and here in Fredericton and God, I can't remember where else, Newfoundland and St. John's. But we had to cancel all that. And actually, if I could put a quick plug in for an upcoming, we're going to do them all online. And we're going to, you'll have to look for, we're still planning. You have to look for details on the fiddlehead.ca website. We're going to be, announcing some details soon. But I think the online event is going to let us have all 40 contributors be able to participate, whereas before we had to pick and choose because we had to fly people and that sort of thing, right? So this is really going to get us, take the wide angle look and just present everyone. So while it was disappointing that everything had to be postponed and canceled, I think it has presented us with a unique opportunity as well. Did I address all parts of your question?
You did.
There?
And I was wondering when the theme of looking forward emerged. One could imagine it's not a theme particularly well suited, or perhaps it is, to like a global pandemic. Was it informed by the work that you were receiving? You mentioned that this has been in preparation for 3 years, so I can imagine that that theme is one to which you'd gravitated before the COVID-19 crisis that we're in the midst of.
I think there were a few, it kind of happened organically. It didn't just, someone had the idea and bang, we went with it. As we were talking over the course of those 3 years, we were looking back at what we did in the 50th anniversary, and what they did then was they picked the best of everything they had published the 50 years previously. And apparently that was difficult to do because they hadn't thought of it until that point. So they had no permissions to reprint things. So going back and contacting people and that sort of thing, I guess, was a huge undertaking. And I guess it kind of paired with the idea of engaging a new advisory editorial board. And we have many people like Billy Ray Belcourt who really have their fingers on the pulse of what's going on currently, younger writers. And so we wanted, I guess it just happened organically. We said, what if we just use the theme looking forward? It kind of all seemed to crystallize and make sense. And we went off to the races.
Lovely. And if this isn't too ham-fisted a segue, before we look too far forward, I wonder if we could look back just for a moment at what drew you to the Fiddlehead. I know that you're based in Fredericton, and you served as the Poet Laureate in Fredericton from 2016 until 2018. But I wonder where your involvement, you mentioned that you've been the managing editor there for 1 year, with the Fiddlehead began, and what drew you to it as this cultural institution of history and repute.
Well, I'm originally from a small town in northern New Brunswick, and I came to Fredericton to study at UMB. And I had never heard of the Fiddlehead, obviously, before then. And then I went on to do graduate work here, also at UMB, and in the English department. So I was trying to remember earlier if I had published my first poem in the Fiddlehead before I was able to become a reader, or if I was a reader first and then I published my first poem a year later. But as a grad student, I did do some, first readings, and was one of the people to, read through the slush pile and choose what should go forward to the next editors and that sort of thing. And that would be in like 2003-ish. So my history of the Fiddlehead goes back almost 20 years. But after I graduated, I moved away to Alberta. I think I kept up my Fiddlehead subscription for most of that time. And then when I moved back, one day Ross called me and asked me if I'd be interested in helping out with poetry editing.
Mm.
And of course, I said yes before he had the question finished. And for a year or so, I was doing that, and then I think at first the managing editor was going to be away for several months, so they asked me if I wanted to fill in for a couple of months, and I did that. And then the job as kind of the secretary graphic designer came up, and so I applied for that, having already been well acquainted with everything that's going on in the office. And I did that job for 7 years until last year, and then I moved into the managing editor job. So I've kind of done just about every little job you can do on a literary magazine, except for, like, as Sue's job and Ross before, picking the issue and deciding what's in it. I've pretty much done every little thing to do with the journal, from licking stamps to lugging boxes to the mail, and you name it, I've done it.
And so, I mean, especially as you've increasingly transitioned, or as the magazine, I suppose, has increasingly transitioned online, especially the point now where you're into having digital launches and digital issues. Have you sensed, also keeping in mind this movement of looking forward and diversifying the editorial board, have you sensed any sort of change in the trajectory of the Fiddlehead since you've been involved in it, or ways in which its vision or direction have calibrated in any way, or like recalibrated in any way?
Well, the short answer is yes. And the one kind of litmus test, if you will, for pointing out how things are evolving, is that 2 managing editors ago, a woman named Sabina Campbell, who still does our book review editing and does the proofreading of the issues. So as a long time the production person, I would print out a proof and I would bring it to her so she could proof it. And when she was done proofing, and she's a very opinionated person, I love her for that.
Yeah.
She'll tell me, and she's been increasingly doing this over the course of the last couple of years, saying, wow, this is so different. For a while, she didn't quite see what the fuss was about creative nonfiction. I mean, for a long time, creative nonfiction was not a genre at the Fiddlehead. The last couple of years, we've really, taken on publishing more creative nonfiction. Luckily enough, bringing on board Alicia Elliott to be our creative nonfiction editor, our first creative nonfiction editor. And the voices and writers that she's brought into the fold have really just expanded our reach with different writers, right? Because a lot of younger writers know Alicia Elliott before they would have known what the Fiddlehead was.
Sure.
She
The same thing with
a lot of,
I would suspect.
Yeah, exactly. So it's a combination of some of those things, and now we have a creative nonfiction contest. We used to have just the fiction and poetry for 30 years. And we have creative nonfiction contest, and that's grown in the last year. We've done it twice now, and it's grown significantly. Although perhaps in part response to your question about COVID-19 and how things have changed, I think our contest was open during the first 3 months of the pandemic. So I think some people had a lot of extra time to really focus on creative endeavors and do some writing.
And the next general submission period window will open on the 15th of September and close on the 30th of November. And your short fiction contest, whose whose submission window opened on June 1st will close on September 1st.
That's right.
And the best fiction contest, the winner would not only receive publication in the winter issue, but also receive $2,000 for the winning piece of fiction. Is that right?
That's right. Yep. Yep. And
And
just a note of clarification about the submission windows. Those are for submittable, but we do accept sassy, like snail mail submissions year round for those people that, don't want to do submittable or can't do submittable or want to do it the old fashioned way.
very good.
And we used to get like 1,200, 1,400 submissions a year, like snail mail. And now it's down to about 150, 200. And our online submissions have gone up. I think we had 4,500 last year,
Wow.
2019. We're still reading. We're at the end of October, or sorry, the end of November in our 2019 pile of submissions.
Wow.
So,
Yeah, I mean, I might have at the top misrepresented the editorial board as consisting of yourself, Sue Sinclair, and Ross Leckie, but you have got quite a team assembled around you. I wonder if you'd mention a few words about perhaps the longer serving amongst you and what they brought to the table and continue to bring to the table, I suppose, as the table is built by each of you collectively.
that's right. Well, when I first got involved, most of the editorial reading, like the cutting, each submission goes through 3 rounds of readers if they move along. A first reader and a second reader, and then the final editors make decisions. For the longest time, in my involvement, we get grad student assistants from the English department to do most of that reading, and with a couple of local volunteers, they did most of the reading. But now, with the amount of submissions I told you, we couldn't do it with just the grad students.
Yeah.
So we've got grad students from other programs that we've brought on board, and really, we couldn't put out the magazine itself without them reading the submissions. And it's, I think in the next the issue, Sue will have something to say in the editorial about that, because we really feel it behooves us to constantly thank these people and for their just extraordinary work.
Absolutely. And so you mentioned the diversification of the kind of work that you're soliciting, the genres of work you're soliciting, including now creative nonfiction. And in scrolling through the website, it seems to me that there's no genre that you don't publish. I mean, even play excerpts, or you'll consider novel excerpts, reviews, of course, poetry, short fiction, graphic fiction, or graphic visual art, graphic art. I mean, is there anything that is not public? Are there things that I neglected to mention there? And is there anything in terms of genre that you don't publish? And is there a reason for that?
Well, I can't think of anything that we wouldn't publish if it was really good. I mean, last summer we published a novella over 2 issues. So we've got the novella in there too. We are actively trying to come up with a way to get spoken word poetry, whether that's printed in the magazine and hyperlinks to our website with a performance. We kind of experimented with that this year and a half ago or so with Rebecca Thomas. We published a poem of hers that we had recorded and provided the link. And we've done the graphic, we haven't done a graphic novel, but we did a graphic poem a couple of years ago. Anita Leahy had this poem, and it was illustrated by Pauline Conley. Very beautiful. We did it in full color as well. It's just really novel, I thought. So I don't think so. And if there's a genre that someone out there says, oh, you haven't done this, I mean, if we get something that's good, we'll find a way to do it, I think.
Excellent.
And I think that's part of our spirit of, looking ahead and trying to be, inclusive in always.
Excellent. And with the 75th anniversary issue as a quarterly, that would have marked the 300th issue of the Fiddlehead. And so I say to you, sir, here's to 300 more. I direct the audience to the description below the video for links in order to subscribe and submit their work. And with that, Mr. Letourneau, thank you very much for your time. This has been episode 6 of Talking with the Press, as presented by Poetry London Online. I hope you're well. I wish you the best.
Thank you.
Take care.